Hello everyone, I'm James Jack and this is Skills to Pay the Bills. I'm with Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate. We serve both the Maryland, DC, and Virginia metropolitan area for people who want to buy a home or to sell a home, to lease a home, or if they just want to get some information about us in terms of how the market is performing now. Not the stock market, but the housing market. Yes, in fact, that's one of the questions people always ask. Well, what's the market like now? And, we don't want to be curt, so we tell them, well, the market's doing well, But if you listen to some of the people out there, they'll tell you, oh, no, it's not doing so well at all. But we always try to give people a very optimistic view of the market in light of what we've gone through in the past couple of years. That being said, one of the things that I really like about being in the real estate industry is that it's just not it's not a one-way street. It's many streets. It's a Bailey's Crossroads. It's a seven corners. It's a four corners. It's where many roads meet and lots of people exchange ideas. They have different viewpoints about different things, from their homes to their jobs to their schools, everything. And so for that reason, I'm going to touch upon a couple of important topics that I've just been thinking about for the past few days. Oh, before I get to that though, when I leave the studio, every time I do a taping session or every time I do a radio session, I cross the Woodrow Wilson Bridge and I look to my right and there's the Ferris wheel at National Harbor. Of course, I can't really tell you what it looks like. You're going to have to go and see it yourself. That's a quick glance. Just a tease. But I really have this in me to one day just go over there and buy my ticket, take my camera with me, and go up as high as it will go, as many times as it will go around. And every time it goes up, I'm going to be looking around to see what I normally could not see when I'm flying, because this is a restricted area and we're not allowed in here to look at the communities and look at all the wonderful things that the Washington, D.C. area has. So, that being said, the National Harbor has invested $15 million in this Ferris wheel. So if they want $15 or $20 from me, they're going to get it, because I'm going to take that ride, even if I have to stand in line. And if I feel very good about it, I'm going to take it again. Why? Because I know that once I get to the top and I can look around, I will see those communities and those areas where I've worked with people, I've gotten to know people, they become my friends, and I can just sort of reach out and touch those communities. So based on the way it looks, it appears to spin toward the Virginia horizon. And so going up, I can turn around and look at Prince George's County. I can see St. Charles and probably St. Mary's, Charles County, I should say, and possibly St. Mary's. And I can look, of course, to my right and see the District of Columbia, the Potomac River, the Bowling Air Force Base, or the Joint Base as they call it. I can see the stadium where the Nationals play. I can even look farther back and see where the Redskins play. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say that word. I meant to say Washington's football team. But we'll touch upon that later on. And as I look across the river, I can see National Airport, I can see Delray, I can see Kingstown, I can see all these beautiful communities. Maybe I could see Reston and Vienna. Maybe I can see the towers where we are here at Fairfax Public Access. So I just wanted to touch upon that because I think it's really nice to live in an area where there's always something new happening. And the reason I say that is because people always tell me, well, I don't see anything happening in my neighborhood. Well, maybe you should get out of the car and take a walk, whether it's in the morning or whether it's in the evening. It'll do you good for your health and your heart. And not only that, but when you go places, park the car or get off the metro at an earlier stop and just walk around, and you'll be amazed at some of the things that you see. You never know what's going to happen when you see something that you've never seen before. I was at a luncheon one afternoon. A good friend invited me over, and it was a historical society here in the District of Columbia. And they just talked and ate about things that happened over 100 years ago, especially during the Civil War. And even though I've been to some of the places that they talked about, I never put the human quality into it. I always thought about the Civil War as being this clash between the South and the North. But here, especially on this particular day, they were talking about the munitions depot in Southwest DC near Main Street, where the fort is. And the munitions depot was actually run by one man, but all the people who did the, however they make the bullets, were women. And there was a tremendous explosion one day. And a lot of people died, a lot of people were hurt, and that history sometimes we easily gloss over. So multiply that by all the different neighborhoods in this area, and going back 200 years, there's a lot to be said about no matter which neighborhood you are in, and no matter how you look at that house and say, I would never live in that neighborhood, maybe you should learn a little bit more about where you live and where your neighbors live, and why your neighbors don't want to live in your neighborhood because they're completely satisfied. They're absolutely happy with where they live, just as you are. Then when you go out sometimes, you should also take a look at what else is happening beyond the fact that a new Wegmans has just come to town, or new Trader Joe's, or they're building a new whatever in that particular neighborhood. Maybe you should look at some of the houses that are being renovated, and look at some of the new houses that are going up, and you will discover over a period of time there's a lot more going on than what you might hear by listening to the radio or watching TV. It's sort of like being up on the Ferris wheel. On a clear day, you can see so much. It's sort of like going to the doctor, isn't it? And the doctor says, well, how are you? And you ask yourself, why is he asking me this? He's supposed to examine me and tell me this, or she's supposed to tell me what's going on. Well, that's how they start off. And they go through a procedure, step by step, to determine what your actual condition is. And that's what you should do when you go into certain neighborhoods and you look around and you say to yourself, my, that house sure does look old. I wonder who lived there before. You might discover that that house on Q Street was a row house, a boarding house where Duke Ellington lived as a poor musician who worked at the Howard Theater in LeDroit Park, and he and his buddies walked over there every night and played and then came back. And that house is still standing there. Or you might discover some things about houses in Oxon Hill or in Gunston that you never knew about, or parks and things like that. Why is this here? So I just wanted to touch upon that. And what I would like to do in the near future is to come back and talk about some of these neighborhoods. So when you drive through, or you're walking through and you're looking at the houses and the parks and the churches and everything else, you'll have a better feel for why this is such a wonderful area to live in. And then when people ask you, what's the market like today? You can say, absolutely beautiful. Why am I talking about markets? Well, if I have enough time today, I want to also talk about some of the things that are happening outside of buying a home, but happening inside the home. And one of those is, if you have a 9th grader or a 10th grader or an 11th grader, and you've been wondering whether or not they're going to go to college because they haven't said anything to you about it, you know, usually they don't take the initiative. It's us who start the ball to rolling in terms of whether or not they're going to go to college. Then it occurs to us whether or not we are prepared to send our kids to college. So this is a pocketbook issue. I thought about it and I said to myself, well, I do a radio show and it's called Holmes Radio, and sometimes I do a TV show and it's called Holmes Radio also. So maybe I can do a little subtopic under Holmes Radio and call it Holmes Economics. and I can touch upon those pocketbook issues. Now, I'm not an economist myself. I'm just a washed out disc jockey who happened to be lucky enough to meet someone who knew a lot about real estate, and we decided that, well, why not we put our minds together and do this probably for the rest of our lives. And as a result, what I have gained in terms of experience over the years has given me a pretty good perspective of not only seeing houses and homes and things like that beyond something that you sell or that you trade or you rent or you fix up or whatever, but a place where people live, people like you and people like me. So maybe the issues that you have are health-related issues. Or maybe the issues that you have or concerns that you have to do with retirement. But being where we are at this moment, I would like to be able to focus on another home economics issue, and that is, how am I going to pay for little Johnny, or growing up Johnny, or little Becky, or growing up Becky to go to college? They obviously are not at the top of their class. They're not going to get that full ride to Harvard or Yale. Am I going to have to take out a loan? Am I going to have to foot the bill for their student loans or whatever the case may be? So when I come back, I'm going to talk about this, the first of a number of home economics topics under the umbrella of Homes Radio. And it will be about how do you prepare for your kid who is going to go to college, and how are you going to make sure that by the time your kid graduates from college, you won't be flat broke. It's so easy, really. You would be surprised. And then when they are gone away and you have those weekends to yourself with your special someone, you can take a ride on a Ferris wheel and be a kid again yourself. Oh, this is such a wonderful thing that's happening in this area. It could mean probably more things happening for all of us to do and be really proud of the fact that we live in the Washington, D.C. area at a time like this. I'm James Jack, and this is Skills to Pay the Bills. I'm with Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate, and I'll be right back.
Join our mission to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. Every week, we feature a medley of gifts from artists, performers, ministers, and more. Experience the Lord's everlasting light in the cool of the day.
Where am I at this point? Oh, I'm back where I started from, am I not? That brings to mind a little story that I would like to tell. I'm James Jack. I'm with Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate. This is Skills to Pay the Bills. And as I was talking about earlier, in case you just joined us, about how wonderful it is to live in this area with so many. Actually, it's true all across the country, no matter where you go, whether you're in San Francisco, or if you're in Monroe, Louisiana, or if you're in Hartford, Connecticut. When you get to know your neighborhood, it just makes you feel so much better, and you understand why home sweet home is something that really goes deep. Now, we're at home, and we've got our kids, and one is in the 9th grade, and one is in the 10th grade, another one is in the 11th grade, and you're saying to yourself, how am I going to pay for them to go to Virginia Tech, the University of Maryland, to Howard, or any one of these schools around here, or to a school away? Well, a lot of people think, especially economists and financial planners, say that it's prudent to plan way in advance, but we know things happen, and they don't always happen the way that we want them to happen. Not only that, we don't know whether or not it's really going to make any difference whether we save money for our kid to go to college when they tell us, no, I'm not going to college, I'm going into the military, or I'm going to play guitar in a rock and roll band. We just don't know. But it is prudent to plan ahead of time. Why? Well, some of us are still strapped with student loans. And even in the news today, there is talk about there should be some type of easing up on the burden that not only families have with student loans, but also the country itself. Something like 50 million people still owe student loans with very high interest rates. That's another subject for another day. Right now, let's talk about what it's like to approach student debt or impending student debt or getting your kid into a really good school. My wife and I, Ernestine, and I were coming from, I think, New Jersey a few weeks ago, and we were approaching the Harbor Tunnel in Baltimore. And I love the Harbor Tunnel. Why? Because I'm just that kind of person. You know, I just love things like that. But as we were going into the tunnel, there's this big bus in front of us. Yeah, I got mad. I did not like the idea that this bus was going to block my way. But thankfully, Ernestine is always there to calm my nerves and keep me in check. And since she was driving, I pulled out my camera and decided to take a little video of what was going on. So we entered the tunnel, as you will see on the video, that a snapshot of one of the pictures that I took, I should say, of us entering the tunnel, and I'm behind this bus. And we're driving along, and I'm thinking to myself, if there was only one way I could just pass this bus, but there's a car on the right, and on the left, and there's another one ahead, and I can't pass the bus. And while I'm thinking about that, the most extraordinary thing happened. The bus's brake lights came on. Not that it was stopping, but slowing down, and it looked like eyes looking back at me, and I said, whoa, I like that. That's like a close encounter of a third kind. All right, what else is in store? And we kept going through the tunnel deeper and deeper and deeper. And I just kept watching the bus and the cars passing and seeing those bright red brake lights and thinking to myself, I know what's beyond this, but what if I didn't know? How would I feel? Would I have apprehension, or would there be anticipation as to what's going on? But instead, I was so focused on the bus until we reached the exit point. And this bright light overcame us. And I thought to myself, that's like the light that people talk about when they're going there. Anyway, life is a lot like that. You don't really know what's in store for you. The only thing that you can do is plan for the worst and also the best, and hope that everything works out in your favor. My father was a very simple man, but he was a very, very smart man. And two of the things that he used to say, I'll never forget, and one of them was when he would ask me, why do you need to go to college? When I can get you on here at the plant and you can make more money than most people in this area. My father worked at a very, very, very successful plant in Memphis, Tennessee. And we were very lucky because he took very good care of us. But I told him I was not going to work in the plant because, number one, those chemicals that they produce one day are going to cause a lot of harm for a lot of us. When I tried to explain to him what the plant was doing, he says, I don't want to hear it. And if you have any sense about it, you wouldn't want to hear about it either, because that plant puts food on your table. Still, I said, my hands are not designed for that. You know, I don't like rough hands, and I don't like soot, and I don't like smells and things like that. I like books. I like knowing things. I like learning. I like experiencing what someone else learned 500 years ago. And my father had a penchant for saying, there's no kind of fool like an educated fool. You go ahead and get your education, and I'll guarantee you will be in no better shape than I am today. But I wasn't thinking about that, because to me, knowing things was more important than buying things. If you have a kid and you think that it's important for your kid to go to college, then you probably understand what I understand. or you feel what I feel. Now, if your kid wants to do something else, then give them your blessings and tell them that you wish them well and support them and give them every bit of a push that you can so that they can be happy doing what they're doing. But if you have a kid who from the 5th or 6th grade, they've been telling you, this kid could wind up at UVA or at Johns Hopkins or at Temple or whatever, because this kid has the gift. And you're saying to yourself, but I can't afford those schools. Well, maybe you should plan ahead of time. Unfortunately, by the time you reach January of the year that your kid is graduating from high school, you will be inundated with offers from people who are saying, I can get your kid a scholarship, or I can get them money for free or for a little fee. What should you do? Well, the first thing that you should do is say to yourself, it sounds too good to be true. And if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't worth the paper that it's written on. Instead, what you should do is write down a few things. A couple of them I'm going to give to you now. And when I come back in another session, I'm just going to lay it out the way that Michelle Singletary of the Washington Post laid it out when I called a friend and asked her, can you give me some information about where you found resources for your son and daughter to go to school? She says, well, I've been following Michelle for a long time, so I want to give Michelle credit for that. And I've never met her personally, but I do know about her personal finance column in the Washington Post. And it coincides with what the ACT people are saying, the SAT people are saying, and all these other organizations that are there to really help you navigate these rough waters ahead. The first thing that I would advise you to do is stay as far away from a student loan as you possibly can, or mortgaging your house to pay for your kids' education. And instead, start now, 6 months before then, before January, planning for your kid. No, better still, start a year and a half before January of the year your kid is graduating. And at that point, follow these simple little guidelines. 1, be reasonable. If your kid is not Phi Beta Kappa material, then at least not right now, because you never know. You know, once they go to school, you never know what's going to happen. They may find that niche and just take off like a rocket. But if you are reasonably certain that your kid is not going to get a full ride to Rutgers, don't fool yourself. However, don't be dismayed, because there's money for your kid. And as I said, in some upcoming episodes, I'm going to point out some of the things that I discovered, not only from Michelle Singletary, but from organizations that are in the business of doing this. One of them is the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. Really not hard to find. Go on the web and just Google NASFAA. It'll pop right up before you. And that's sort of like following the yellow brick road. These organizations are designed to keep you from falling into the spider's web. The reason I'm saying that is because anytime money is exchanged, there's always someone. Now, which shoulder is it? It's the good one on this side and the bad one. Well, you know how it is in the cartoons. There's always one whispering in your ear, do it, and the other one saying, don't do it, or here's a freebie or whatever. So by now, we all know scams when we see them and we hear about them and things like that. But as I said before, what I want to do is talk to you a little bit more about things that you should do. So first of all, you got to get your kid prepared for the ACT or the SAT. I only know of 2 people who ever got into Harvard without taking an entrance exam or without having to take the SAT or the SAT, because Harvard knew about them. However, when we come back to this subject, we're going to talk about some of the things that you should do, the checklist from starting with the SAT and the ACT and your kids' grades to the actual application. It's going to be fun. I think you're going to enjoy it. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time thinking about my ride on the Ferris wheel. And while you're thinking about how you can get that money for your kid to get into school and get those grades up, if they're at a 2.5 GPA, you want to get them up to around a 3.5 GPA, and the time to start is in the 10th grade, and then you and I will have a really good discussion. I'm James Jack. I always like talking to you because I think you like listening to me and watching what we do here at FPA. For Skills to Pay the Bills and Ernestine J. Wilson Real Estate, you have yourself a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful life.